Welcome to the Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. Welcome. What? My show don't say January 3rd. They say February. Yes, they do. Hey, welcome back, Wolfpack. Wolf here. I no. Ooh, way back in time, 30 January. So this is gonna be our weekly news recap, but on a Wednesday, not on a Saturday. Sorry about us not doing a show Saturday or Sunday. That was all my fault. I will not jokingly blame Fox as I would usually blame all things on him, but I was sick and we were both busy. So it was kind of hard to get a time. My throat was really, really sore. Anyways, we got the same show that we usually do then, but more abbreviated because we have to go to work tomorrow. Yes. In any case, this is going to be the weekly news recap behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. And of course, alongside me is my co-host Fox Trevize, and we have a special guest. How you doing, Fox? Nope. Our special guest is Willow Wolf. Hey, Willow, you got anything to say? You're not gonna howl? You want a grilled cheese? You want grilled cheese? You want grilled cheese? No? Okay. There you go. Yeah, sweet. All right. So let's get straight into the stories. That's actually what their mission statement is: to constantly be prepared for their services being needed. Maybe 6 months prior of constant violence and rhetoric calling for violence, mostly on the Democrat side, maybe that was what would clue them in that there was violence on the way. It wouldn't be President Trump calling for violence because it didn't happen, but I'm pretty sure it was Maxine Waters saying to go commit assault. Trump supporters. Yeah, they're trying to make the implication that the worry about violence was coming from right wing militias rather than the very real expectation that if Trump won, the violent riots that have been going on through his entire presidency would probably be a lot worse. And that's what most people are concerned about, not right wing militias. Right wing militias actually haven't been committing acts of violence through the last 4 years, or ever, right? But them being prepared is a defensive thing. So if the Democrats keep committing the acts of violence that they've been doing, people were concerned that there might be a response to it of self defense, and that might that's the problem. So they're trying to blame in this article. By the way, just so you know the how this was written. This is just the article and us responding as we go through. Um, so they're trying to blame the right wing militias, whereas the violence was and has been entirely on the left. The accusations of violence coming from the newly minted terrorist group, the Proud Boys, was always defensive. The Proud Boys were going to protest, and the left wing militias, the Antifa and BLM, were going there and attacking them, and then getting beat up by the people they were attacking. It's a very different morally. Anyways, continue. Are they counting the also the large groups of people who are protesting against the the assumption that he had won based off all of the yeah, I think they're counting them. Yeah, they've been against him the entire time. And any corporation that did show any kind of support for him were mercilessly attacked by cancel culture, and and so the ones that may have supported him were silent. Yeah. Yes. Uh, there was a conspiracy unfolding. Trump was right. And the conspiracy was unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protest and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left wing activists and business titans. You might call it a conspiracy. The pact was formalized in a terse, little noticed joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL CIO, published on election day. Both sides would come to see it as a sort of implicit bargain, inspired by the summer's massive, sometimes destructive racial justice protests, which were were completely done by the left, by the way, in which the forces of labor came together with the forces of capital to keep the peace all the time destructive. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're like 95% of the time we're not waging war. Whoa, 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 whoa. I would say that they are far more destructive by ratio than we are. um, don't insult my people like that. So, the forces of capital, working with the forces of labor, were aspiring to keep the peace and oppose Trump's assault on democracy. And by assault on democracy, they're saying that they were opposing his legitimate appeals, legal appeals to what was obvious fraud. Fraud that was not disproven, but was ignored, was not given its day in court. We have lots of evidence showing that there was fraud in the election, and to a mountainous degree that was not fully captured because it wasn't litigated, was not investigated thoroughly. So we do not know who really would have won because they failed to actually try to find out who would have. They didn't look into the fraud. And so by not addressing the fraud, you actually are hurting democracy. Yes. Now, another thing I wanted you to catch in the statement was they're saying that activist groups, the activist groups that had supported the violence from Antifa and BLM, yes, working with another thing I want corporations, which mostly they're referring to media companies, social media, and news companies who also supported the violence from BLM and Antifa. They working together control the information that was being put out there, controlling the narrative about who won, and hiding any evidence of fraud, banning people who talk about it, removing posts about it, acting as though there was no legitimate contest to the vote count, and labeling anyone who would dare say that there was a legitimate concern about our democracy being subverted by fraud, that they themselves are the ones subverting democracy, and that they are Nazis, white supremacists. They did this entire propaganda campaign to try to sway the public opinion that Biden was the uncontested winner. And they're saying they were doing this to prevent violence from, like we'd seen over the last 6 to 8 months, the violence that they supported.
Guys, just to be clear. Seriously, my mic's not been working this whole time and nobody in chat said anything.
What? Oh my god! So they've only been hearing me talk to myself?
Yes. I almost want to stop the show. Like I don't know. I feel like I would just like ruin the whole thing.
Well, let's put it up to the audience. Do you guys want us we've spent a lot of time on just this part so far?
Why would you do that?
What's that?
Atter Lupus just showed up. He gave $5 and he says, "How's it going? Someday I'll show up on time."
He gave us $5.
Well, alrighty. Well,
okay. Can you do a short recap of what they missed from what you said?
No, because I've been talking for 30 minutes.
Fair enough. Okay, so it wasn't clear. We're talking about the left coming out and doing basically taking credit for the shadow cabal that helped rig the election. They're saying they fortified the election, but they actually are describing how they rigged it. And this article is very much like a criminal returning to the scene of the crime to take credit for what they've done. Now, we're going through the article, reading it. You missed the very first paragraph. That wasn't the most pivotal one, and we'll read on from that point.
We could just skip this and just recover it on Saturday.
Okay.
Let's just start with a clean story.
We'll move down to the Military Purge. I want to do that because it's kind of related.
Can you do that?
It's very general.
Okay. Which one's that?
It's at the bottom of this story.
Oh, okay.
It's one paragraph. So there's been we call it the Military Purge has begun, but it's a little bit satirical. So newly confirmed Secretary of Defense General Lloyd Austin has ordered a military-wide stand-down to allow for, quote, needed discussions between local commanders and their soldiers about right-wing extremism within their ranks. Details of the stand-down, an event when military members pause normal operations to convene and talk about a topic, are to be announced, but they haven't been announced yet, but should be within the next 60 days. So there is some hyperbole about this, saying that this is the beginning of a purge of the military, and that's possible. But a purge of the military cannot be done completely by just assigning one person at the top and making and he can't himself make everyone be removed. It requires the every leader on the way down the chain actually enforcing the insane kind of policies like investigating people for connection to conservative groups. Now, there's a legitimate concern based on what they did with the National Guard, where they were looking for people to remove them from the Capitol because of connections to not radical, normal conservative groups, right? There's a concern that after that, you then say you want to talk about just right-wing extremism, that you might be targeting members of the military, majority of which voted for Trump and are conservative. You might be targeting them to remove them because of their political opinions. That might be their intent, but here's how a stand-down works.
It's on the trail, right? So this is like step one of getting to that point. They're certainly, they bought a ticket. They're not at the destination yet, but they've certainly bought a ticket and they want to go there.
Yes, and I would say that because of this, military members should be continue not to talk about politics and highlight themselves in uniform.
Yeah, Dyer.
In uniform at work. In case this becomes a thing in the future, but this is not there yet. It's just a step towards that direction. Now, how stand-down works, I'll use the example of the sexual assault stand-down. There's a problem in the military of sexual assault, and how they dealt with that was to have several stand-downs. Each time they have a stand-down, basically the higher-level leadership puts out a policy message, setting the groundwork for what the discussion will be about. And then they have working groups at the higher level leadership where they say, here's what I want different commanders to do in their units. Basically have a conversation, which the intent of the conversation is to put out guidance, specific guidance and solutions for the problem, right? So what this will be so far has been a directive saying that the U.S. military is going to continue what they've already been doing and just not allow you to commit crimes. So they've already put out a policy message saying you can continue to protest, because that is, you're allowed to do that in the military, just not in uniform. You, however, have never been allowed to commit crimes in or outside of your uniform. You're not allowed to. So, and they are not saying any ideology or any particular group. It doesn't matter. It looks like the leadership below this general are not targeting conservatives yet. And I know that no good leader will, no good military leader would enforce such an insane policy. I'm sure many.
Well, so that's where you get into this idea that the Democrats are trying to make a new Department Department of Homeland Security that's pointed inward and looking for their quote unquote extremist right wing groups, which
that's
is
probably where it's going to come to. Yes.
Yeah,
So
where this will go is it won't be the military needs to get rid of people who ascribe to Young America's Foundation. No, it's the military needs to get rid of people who are members of terrorist organizations. And here's the list of terrorist organizations.
Yeah,
that's what it'll be.
I think the military won't do it to itself. I think, like you said, that it'll probably be the intel agencies that are then going to be investigating the military to remove them, because that is probably the only way they could do it. So though this itself is not the beginning of the military purge, it is a step towards that direction, and we should definitely keep our mind open, because what we don't want is a politically biased military. We're not supposed to have a part in the political process. And because that's what it's kind of a principle which our democracy was built on, is not having a government that has power because of its military. It has power because of the consent of the governed. Right now, a dictatorship requires loyalty of the military.
Well, and, some accelerationist opinion might be. Do it now. Stop pussyfoot and get. Let's. If they're gonna oust the military guys, they're gonna oust the conservatives. Do it now. Do it now, so that we can, fill out the ranks in the militias. Don't just sit there and pussyfoot at Biden. If you're gonna do it, do it. Do it now.
I'm not allowed to make a statement on that.
Well. The issue is, and that's part of accelerationism. In general, is kind of not a great idea, but it does. One of the reasons why it is an idea is because of the frogs boiling in water issue, where if you just slowly raise the temperature, if they slowly edge out conservative as even an ideology choice, that you're not allowed to be conservative in the military. If they just slowly do that over the course of 10 years, while they're slowly disarming and slowly doing all this stuff, then all of a sudden you're just left with a bunch of people that were like slowly edged out. But if they did it all at once, then there could be some kind of resistance to it.
I'll respond to this with a general statement then. So a guard at a Nazi internment camp didn't just one day just work there, right? He didn't. His first decision to be a part of the system that was murdering Jews and oppressing people wasn't the day he was assigned to the prison camp, right? At some point, every person who is involved in atrocity has the moral decision of, will I resist and fight back against this thing, or will I be a part of it? And it's if they accelerate like that, a lot of people will be given that decision, and it'll be more obvious, right? Because sometimes that first decision isn't very obvious, the one that puts you down the road, but then it becomes more and more obvious as time goes on, that it gets harder for them because they get more trapped. Like once he's at the camp, like if now he's deciding I'm going to get murdered, or I'm going to be part of multiple mass murders, right? Where earlier on he could have probably got away.
Well, because in that situation, like there's not an option to not do it anymore, right? Because now that you've got a camp set up, it's like, well, you're either guarding the camp or you're in the camp, and like
right. There is an option. The other option is you're in the camp.
Yeah. So.
And,
yeah. So that's where the issue's at.
The frog boiling will lead to people who are not aware of what's going on to more likely get themselves further down that road.
Just like the union guys. So sucks for them, right?
Sorry, I don't have any compassion for that.
Alrighty. Well, next story.
Next story, yeah.
Alrighty. Well, we have the stimulus. Jesus Christ, that was a big book. We have the
oh, jeez Louise.
Stimulus package. All right, so the House of Representatives on Friday passed an updated budget resolution sent to the Senate that paves the way for Democrats to push through President Biden's $1.9 trillion corona relief package. It's really like a $5 billion corona relief package and like $1.8 trillion of stuff. Dyer added quotes to quote President Biden. All right, so they did this without needing any GOP support, so much for bipartisanship and unity, but I guess that went out the door ages ago. Who's in the background there? Why is there like an obvious tranny in the background? Do you see that? This purple person?
Yes. And are you asking me why there is a obvious tranny in the Democrat Party, or
is that's not a senator or a congressman, is it? Maybe it is. I don't know. It looks like he's like looks like he like got time zapped from like Egypt or something. He's got these like giant like wrist cuff things on.
He's got a very, very pronounced jawline, though.
It's very distracting.
Anyways, so all House Republicans voted no, plus one Democrat. Hey, look, bipartisanship.
Hey.
So Representative Jared Golden of Maine, VP, what? Plus, that was the Democrat who voted against it. So VP Kamala Harris broke the tie. The measure unlocks the process for lawmakers to now draft a final coronavirus relief bill under the budget reconciliation.
Wait. Oh, no. Kamala Harris broke the tie in the Senate, not in the House, though.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. That's important context.
The lawmakers are now draft a coronavirus bill and the budget reconciliation rules that would let Democrats void a GOP filibuster.
Yay.
Which, the Republicans immediately respond to that saying, "You're going to regret that one too. You guys keep on removing abilities, to resist different policies." Right?
Well, at this point, I think that they're probably correct in their confidence that even if they do create these giant levers of power, the Republicans are too much of a pussy to use them.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think they're too weak.
All right, so the Democrat bill would provide $1,400 stimulus checks for Americans sometime in the next year, making the 52. Right now, as it's set up, this is for people making under 52,000 per year. This is far less than what they promised back in December, which was 2,000 for families making 75,000, individuals making 75,000 or less. So they've kind of backtracked a little bit on their math. That they're getting this back to $1,400 instead of $2,000, a fresh $2,000. And then it used, like, the last round was the cutoff started happening if you made 75,000 a year, and now they're backing it down to 52,000 per year, which happens to be around the income that you don't have to pay any income tax at all. So like if you're making, and that was under Trump, the Trump tax cuts basically raised the floor up to about 50 grand. And if you made 50 grand, you basically don't have to pay taxes. So this is purely from taxpayers to non-taxpayers, which is great. And you imagine that right at the line where you have to start paying taxes, that's the middle class. So they're specifically cutting out the middle class in this.
Yes, and the middle class is really the ones that were the most affected in many ways, because they're the ones who were losing the entire business. We're working in the higher wage jobs that weren't continued during the lockdowns, the ones that were less necessary. Because a lot of people who work at the like Walmart's, they're the low-paying jobs, but that were considered essential, but they're still employed, right? A lot of the people who were affected were ones who were in the middle class, making far more than 52,000 in a year. Also, for context, the United States median household income is 68,700. So they're cutting way below even the median income.
Yeah, like the estimates was that it was cutting out like 40 or 50 million Americans. Like it was like a lot of people. It's like,
right.
Well, I mean, but like, you don't really need to grease their palms for at least 4 years. So yeah, you had a good like 3.5 years before you start greasing their palms again. So, fuck you guys.
And then what's even worse is what they're willing to fund but not fund this, right? Like this is a fraction of this bill is actually payments to people who were victimized by government policy.
Yeah, it's filled with money for the airlines again. It's filled with money for
foreign aid.
The arts, the foreign aid, crazy like gender studies crap. So
they're willing to say fuck you to 5 million Americans who, by the way, not that I like giving out government handouts to people, but when it's directly paying back people who were victimized by government policy, I'm okay with it. When they're saying that fuck you to 5 million Americans, but they're still willing to spend money on foreign countries that hate us, on things that are not necessary, that on people who have not lost their jobs, on businesses that are doing well, right, that are government supported. That's the worst part. What they're willing to fund when they're not willing to fund those Americans.
Yeah, and of course, this thing is full of Easter eggs. The Democrats has put in there, redefining different words all over the place, and the Republicans keep finding new stuff in there because only a few of them actually read it. But yeah. All right. So the complete contents of the bill are not completely known yet, but we do know that stimulus checks and relief for business payroll make up less than half the bill. And like we said, they're not working on this right now because they're doing impeachment instead. When Biden got into office, it was really dumb of McConnell in early January. He could have passed the $1,400 in early January under the Trump presidency, and he didn't. He's a fucking idiot. And then when Biden got in office and the Democrats swept both chambers, they could have very easily the next day passed the stimulus checks, regardless of what they wanted to be. They had all the reins of power. They could have done that immediately. And a lot of people thought, the week after Joe Biden got into office that there would be checks coming out because why wouldn't they? They've got the reins of power. And then
that's why. They don't need the Americans anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fuck you guys. They don't need you anymore. And then the Biden administration said that maybe there would be something in March. And everybody's like, in March? That's 2 months from now. What do you need 2 months for? They're like, well, we need to pack a whole bunch of pork into this bill. It's like, just make another bill. Who are you? Why do you need to make it into one giant bill? Just pass a bill with the stimulus in it. And then if you guys want to make another bill, it's got a whole bunch of crap in it, just make that too. You guys control the whole thing. Why does everybody got to wait for the stimulus checks? And then now we're hearing that the stimulus checks could be as late as May, which is a long time from now.
Yeah. I'm wondering how much buyer's remorse there is right now. I'm assuming it's a lot. A lot of people say, oh, Biden, because, he's not Trump, and just by virtue of him not being Trump, he will fix all the problems. He's going to cure cancer, for God's sake.
Well, no. He already cured cancer. You had to elect him before he would give it to us. Which
he hasn't given it to us yet.
Yeah, he probably forgot it. All right. Willow doesn't like pork.
So the bill will include tens of millions of dollars to open schools. That's something we know for sure. They're telling us will be in there. They are needing tens of millions of dollars to open schools that have stopped being. They're.
Oh, did you hear about?
Funded while they've been closed, right?
Did you hear about? Yeah. Did you hear about the plan to reopen schools from Jen Psaki, the press secretary? So she said the Biden plan was to have by May 50% of all schools open at least 1 day per week. That was their goal by May. Do you know what the current rate of schools being open at least 1 day per week is?
What?
67%. So their goal is to decrease it. Yeah, Willow smells bullshit.
Okay. Here, also, I want to say these schools that have been closed have not stopped being government funded, and yet they require more money, and and that's when they haven't been holding classes, right? So they've been doing less work, getting the same money. Now they need tens of $millions to return to work and continue to be paid.
Yes. So somebody that I follow, YouTuber I follow, who is based out of New York, sadly for him, he went over. He's been doing, some of his coverage has obviously been like the state of New York, the state of the city of New York, and he had done kind of a review of people under 30 with no pre-existing conditions and the death rate of COVID, like 3 or 4 months ago. And it was 4 people in the city of New York under 30 that had no pre-existing conditions have died. That was 4 months ago. He looked at it again 2 days ago, and it was 6. So obviously, it is just killing children by the fractions, just murdering them by the like tens of hundreds of fractions of children.
Every day.
Yes, every day, tens of thousands of a child are murdered by COVID.
Yeah, Timberwolf, I would love to know why we can't receive lemons right now. It's probably because I haven't done something super important, or they hate us now. One of the two.
It can be both.
It can be both. So, yeah, this is ridiculous. They need tens of millions of dollars to just go back to work. I find this insane. So, our tax dollars already fund those schools.
Yes.
Anyways, so the bill we're going to be hearing a lot more about. There will be follow-up stories to this as they actually decide what things they're going to actually put in this bill. But there's a lot of crazy bullshit. But so a lot of this is also going to be filtered out. And telling you about some of the craziest bullshit in the House bill is not going to be good for you because it's going to be filtered out in the process. May be filtered out in the process between the House and the Senate. And I want to talk about what the actual bill is once it's actually being closer to cemented, right?
Yes.
But as a heads up, that so far it's already a gigantic waste of money, and you're not getting what they promised you. That's the key takeaway.
I didn't see that part. Is that true?
What?
This part I'm highlighting in the notes that you didn't read?
The bill may also include giving $10,000 in student loan forgiveness. That doesn't really help people who've lost their jobs. That's a true thing. The Republicans of so some of the Democrats have actually said they want $50,000 in student loans paid off. I think paying off $10,000 of student loans is not really that helpful. What you really should do is just not require payments while you're still requiring people not have their jobs.
Which they've paused, like payments have been paused. So
right, there you go.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
And what this may end up looking like is the Democrats might just decide to like pause student loan payments forever, and then they'll leave this giant bubble, which is actually could be one of their plays. Biden might just keep student loans paused for his whole administration, and then in 4 years he'll be holding students hostage. He'll be holding like 100 million people hostage, that if you elect a Republican, you're going to have to start paying on your loans again. That could be a big play.
Yeah, very possible. That's one thing that they are considering, that they're talking a lot about in the news, having that included in the bill. Again, it's not cemented yet. There's also,
I mean, I don't know about 10,000. I think about $93,523.62.
See, there's the problem.
That'd be about the right amount, I think.
If you promise people we're going to pay off, this gigantic amount of any amount really of a student loan, why wouldn't they just get a student loan right now?
Yes, for real.
Right?
Which actually, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't, because when you get a student loan, like, you don't really have a lot of restrictions on what you use the money for, because you can get like a lot of the loan is just like, oh, well, like, I need just cash so I can go buy books or supplies, and like you can just basically just like use it as like free money, and if they're just gonna forgive it, like, that's the thing is, like, I'm sure people who like did go to college like do understand this, but like, if you want, you can basically use the student loans as kind of a credit card where you can just get cash out of them and then use that for housing and food and anything you want to do. They just give you cash. There's not any way of tracking that it's going to a specific education thing. So a lot of people who have these crazy loans, if they went to a university that had a high cost of living, it's likely a lot of that money that's in their loans is stuff that like would have gone onto a credit card. It was like luxury stuff. Like, I mean, college is, depending on what kind of college you're going to and like the way you're living in the college. I mean, it's kind of a vacation for a lot of people. It's like a 4-year vacation. You can get some pretty nice stuff. And if you realize, like, I didn't live it up super crazy because I knew I was going to have to pay some of that back, at least all of it. And yeah, because my parents sure as fuck were paid for it. But, you know, there was people who either, you know, they didn't have to pay for themselves, or they just, you know, had much richer families. Or now what you're going to have is a lot of people saying like, well, I can just take out $100,000 and, you know, Biden's just going to cancel it. And so you can have this crazy lifestyle, not actually get an education, and then the government just evaporates the debt. Like that's not fair.
Yeah, and then you have people like AOC who went and got a degree at a disreputable school, but basically just went there and lived it up as a college student, lived that life, and then didn't actually learn anything because she forgot. For God's sake, she has an economics degree, but listen to her talk about economics for 5 seconds, and you realize she has no idea what she's talking about. A layman with a high school education knows more about economics than she does.
Yes. AKA Direwolf. Wait.
Hey, I have more than high school education.
Went to school of hard knocks.
No, I actually went to college.
I know.
Got myself a degree, and then I got a military degree. They gave me another one.
Ask Willow how she feels about freeloaders.
Hey, Willow, how do you feel about freeloaders? And I'm not counting you. Because, like...
She does nothing to say. She's not going to waste her breath on them.
What do you think about freeloaders?
Aw.
Disapproving head wag for her.
She gave a bit of a growl. We could hear that.
Oh! Okay, there you go.
Aw. She's such a sweet little killer. All right. Next story?
Next story.
Alrighty.
Oh, Shadow Wolf says hi. She's busy eating, sorry.
All the freaking wolves on the stream today. Outnumbered. All right. So, Florida is taking on social media companies. They're actually doing something. They're not writing a book or doing a full-time co-hosting podcast with the Daily Wire. No, Florida's actually doing something substantive against the social media companies.
I don't know, Fox. I'm not sure I'm okay with this. I'm not used to the GOP actually taking action on something. I'm more used to them giving, you know, really nice sounding speeches,
passionate speeches, writing books, and joining the Daily Wire as a permanent co-host on a show.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this. I just want him to, like, you know, validate my beliefs, but do nothing in government. That's what I'm used to, you know?
Yes. Maybe have some snappy comebacks on Twitter. That'd be great, too. Obviously, I'm talking about Ted Cruz. All right, so lawmakers, speaking of Ted Cruz, apparently he is going to guest with Crowder tomorrow, and Crowder said he's going to tear him apart. So I'm excited to hear about that. And Crowder
have anyone that was like not actually fighting for, you know, conservative ideals.
Well, I don't know. He better tear him apart though, because Ted Cruz
he better.
Is, and I guess an aside before we get too far into this. So Ted Cruz is a full-time co-host of The Verdict, which is a Daily Wire show, Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire. The idea that a sitting senator has a full-time media position is the most absurdly disgusting thing I've ever heard of, and Ben Shapiro should be completely ashamed of himself. Now, Ted Cruz is a very accomplished, intelligent lawyer, and main point of this, and author apparently, the point of that particular Daily Wire show is to review the impeachment, but they've been reviewing other stuff. If Ben decided that he wanted to have Ted Cruz on as a guest for the series of the show, that would be one thing. But having Ted Cruz be like listed as a co-host is like absurd. It'd be like if Jim Jordan had an hour-long show after Tucker Carlson on Fox. It's just like, that's not how the media is not supposed to be literally the politicians. Like,
right.
There is no distinction at that point.
He's not doing his role, but all the time he's spending on doing, media and that stuff, he's actually not spending doing his job, which is to push laws and debate and passing policy that actually would help Americans.
Yeah.
Right. So here's part of our criticism. It's not just that he's doing something outside of what he should be doing as a lawmaker. We're not saying that he's wrong about things. We're not saying he's a bad speaker. He's a good speaker. He has good beliefs. He has good opinions. He's right a lot of the time. The problem is he's not effective at what he's being sent to government to do. Right?
But he tore down Jack Dorsey in the hearing. Man,
yeah,
he said mean words. He said mean words to Jack Dorsey. He did that. A visceral reaction to that is, yes, I like hearing him say those things, but what did he achieve? He sold a lot of copies of his book.
But that's not his job.
That's not what you meant by achievement, is it? Damn.
No, it's not.
Oh, no. All right, well, so unlike Ted Cruz, Ron DeSantis in Florida is actually doing something, and it's actually like a real thing that he's doing. So Ron DeSantis has declared war, figuratively, with Facebook, Twitter, and Silicon Valley. Though maybe in a few years it won't be so figurative. On Tuesday, which was 2 Tuesdays ago, Florida announced a new proposal aimed at realigning. That's a sentence there. On 2 Tuesdays ago, Florida announced that they had plans for legislation that would make it more difficult for social media platforms to cancel people that are running for office.
So DeSantis said this. Over the years, these platforms have changed from neutral platforms that provided Americans ability to speak to enforcers of preferred narratives. Under the proposal, if a technology company deplatforms a candidate or elected office for elected office in Florida during the elections, a company will face a daily fine of $100,000 until the candidate's access to the platform is restored again, which is nice as a first shot across the bow. This only protects people who are running for elected office and prevents them from being silenced. It is not yet protecting average Americans from being silenced, but it is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's this is an example of real legislation that has real teeth to it. Now, again, we don't know exactly how it's going to look like when it gets passed. We'll certainly be following this closely, but this is a real step in the right direction. And there's a lot of conservative states. The states at the state level, the conservatives are doing really well. We control a lot of state houses. We control a lot of governorships. And it's not just Florida. Like, there's really no reason. I don't understand why we haven't seen something like this come from a Texas.
This is cracking the seal, though.
Yes, this is
setting a precedent.
Yep, it does. It's good leadership from Florida. Certainly, a lot of people have been talking about, like, the Civil War, like Texas would like be the obvious one to like secede first. I don't know. Florida's doing pretty good too. I'd probably get behind the Florida coalition, and Texas might find itself in the passenger seat on this. Florida's doing pretty good.
I agree. Now, DeSantis made it fairly obvious. This is a first in a string of policies, and other states could do the same thing, and they also could expand upon this. There's a lot more the state can do to punish companies who are not upholding the spirit of the constitutional rights that American citizens are supposed to have. Like, you can, because every state spends millions of dollars on advertising through social media companies. Just by saying this state, not the individual private business, just the government will not spend money on your company if you silence people from our state. That would be a huge hit to those companies. And it's not that they could actually double check what state every person is from, right? So they'd have to just not ban people in general to avoid banning someone from that state.
Yes. Let's see here. So yeah, I like this plan. Can't wait to see them get through with it, and I'd like to see some other states do it. I might even once they get some actual like legislation written up in Florida, I might grab a copy of that and send that off to my state house and tell them to get their ass together.
One thing there that I didn't put in here, but it was also part of it, was that I'm sorry I didn't put it in the notes, Willow.
Yeah, Willis, just do your job, Dyer.
Yeah. So one thing was that they're going to require that the companies actually put out a warning about changes in their policies ahead of time for people to be aware of what they are and then not enforce them retroactively.
That'd be nice too. All right, so Michigan. We also had Michigan court orders. Michigan court has ordered state to hand over all communications with social media companies and Dominion voting systems. So Michigan election officials are now being ordered to hand over their records of communications they had with tech giants such as Google and Facebook in regards to the 2020 election that were married with credible fraud allegations.
Antrim County Circuit Judge Kevin A. Elsheimer is forcing Michigan the Michigan elections officials to produce all communications with Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple related to the 2020 elections. Attorney Matthew S. DiPermo and his client, William Bailey, are the patriots who sued to get these records produced. They hope this is the beginning of real transparency regarding the vast amount of irregularities that occurred on Election Day in Michigan and other battleground states across the country. This is an example of a lawsuit being levied against those social media companies to find out their involvement.
You also have Crowder has launched a lawsuit against the social media companies as well for their having deplatformed him during his election coverage, which is you can't just decide that no freedom of the press because the freedom of the press is on a certain medium, and you just can't do that anymore.
Right. So what they're hoping to find, I believe, is a concerted, coordinated effort between these social media companies to hide information from the public, which would be grounds for some criminal prosecutions.
Man, if only there was a magazine that had written an article explaining this alleged conspiracy to stop information from spreading. If only somebody had just spilled the beans on all of that and there was proof. Darn.
So our first story that you guys didn't get to hear in entirety, but we'll cover on Saturday, is exactly that evidence already being admitted to.
Yeah.
So there could be down the road some penalties for the social media companies that could be pretty severe.
So what's crazy in the impeachment hearing? A lot of the Democrat evidence is tweets and news articles. That's their evidence. And so I really see the Time piece admitting to the conspiracy. I see that as evidence of the conspiracy, right? That must be admissible in the court of law if tweets are hate op-eds that hate Orange Man. That is evidence that Trump did something wrong. Why wouldn't Time admitting to a conspiracy be the evidence that they did the conspiracy?
Yeah, the impeachment hearings have been ridiculous in general. The evidence they provided is someone saying their opinion about what Trump, how they feel about what Trump is saying, and then also showing Trump saying he wants peace.
Are you tearing paper?
I'm sorry. I'm fiddling with something. It's some Velcro.
It's definitely right inside the microphone.
My bad. Sorry. So their evidence of him inciting violence was him calling for peace, and then people saying how they felt about his statements was that he was inciting violence, but the actual things he said weren't. right? So it doesn't matter how someone feels about his non-incitement of violence words. What did he actually do, right?
Yeah.
Not perception of it. And it's such an insane way of trying to say someone did wrong. It's like me saying I feel, even though you were saying that you think we're good friends, I felt you were attacking me.
I would never say that.
Right, neither of those things, right? So it wouldn't, like, that's an absurd thing. Like, my feeling that you said that you're attacking me when you said something nice doesn't matter. What you actually
but
said
because
was
you've
that.
written it down, if you write it down into an article, then all of a sudden it becomes like hard fact.
Right. And then, yeah, the absurdity of me writing that opinion, that my wrong opinion down, doesn't make it more true.
Yes.
So here's what should have happened. The impeachment that's going on right now is patently absurd, based on nothing, and is hypocritical because the actual Democrats have been calling for violence and inciting violence for years, and the fact that they are accusing Trump of it is ridiculous, and that the entire impeachment is not even running like a constitutional impeachment as outlined in the Constitution, for multiple reasons. The Republicans should not be humoring it. Trump should not be humoring it. It is ridiculous. What they should have done is send one Republican to be the mouthpiece at the very beginning of the impeachment, go up and use their 16 hours to give a short statement of like maybe 10 minutes, basically in no uncertain terms, admonishing the Democrats for what they are doing, the absurdity of the process, and how extra constitutional it is, and then explaining that the Republicans are not just not showing up for work; they're not showing up in protest for this sham of an impeachment. That's what they should have done.
What should the rest of the GOP have done during this time, Dyer?
I don't know. Planned, maybe gone back to the states and started drafting policy to
The
curtail.
barbecue, Dyer, the barbecue.
Oh, right, the barbecue. They should still do that too. So they should have the barbecue at the same time in honor of in honor of the troops, right?
Yeah, so you've got like a couple thousand National Guard stationed in D.C. for this impeachment. I guess they're securing the Capitol for the impeachment, even though there's not been any credible threats that would require 5,000 troops to defend it. Not that there's not credible threats, but there's no threats that seem to rise to the occasion of needing a 5,000 armed military.
How many police did we say they already had in D.C.? Like somewhere like 7,000. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. But what I think that they should have done, in addition to having boycotted the non-impeachment and just sent somebody to say, like, this is the reason why the Republicans aren't here, is because it's not a real impeachment. And
should have brought a burger with them.
Yeah, just filled with nothing. And they should have, during the impeachment, while all those troops are stationed there, they should have set up, have all the Republican congressmen set up a tent, a big giant tent, have a big giant barbecue grill. You get a bunch of great shots of like all the congressmen wearing goofy aprons or whatever, and they're sitting there grilling, and then grill for the troops. Give them a nice lunch, a nice place to hang out. Maybe bring in a country singer or whoever for a kind of a mini concert, and just have an event purely for the troops that are there throughout the week, that they can have some entertainment, ease their burden of being in, the sub-zero DC, being trapped in a parking garage for the next 3 months.
Yeah, that'd be way better than like one basket of store-bought cookies.
Yeah. So like Jill Biden brought them one basket of cookies, and because Jill Biden is a divine being, she was able to split those cookies into enough to feed the whole crowd. It was just like Jesus with the bread and the fish. And Jill Biden, she brought them 5 fish, and as she broke it in half, it infinitely multiplied, and there was somehow
the first
enough.
10 guys were like,
yes.
Thanks.
And when they were done eating, somebody went around and collected 10 baskets full of cookie crumbs. That's how much was left over. See, my Catholic school paid off.
And also a bunch of fish for some reason.
Yeah, so I was like, I don't even know where the fish came from. I thought these were chocolate chips. No, but it'd be a great optics, but it would also be like an actual genuinely nice gesture for the troops. And I really think that it's in the Republicans' interest to be garnering support from individuals in the military at this time. And I think it was just obviously from what we've heard, which I think we'll cover more on Saturday. What we've heard so far, the as stupid as the Democrats are with their impeachment effort and what they're saying, the Trump defense team has been just as bad. They've been really, really awful defense that they've said. So I just think it would have been better for everybody to have not shown up. Like, yeah. There was nothing gained, and there was a lot of stuff to be gained by doing something else. I mean, they're going to be doing this for like 3 or 4 weeks. And the Republicans could have been doing other stuff.
And to know, just for context, none of this even matters because the Senate has already stated that enough Republicans are going to not vote to impeach that the outcome is already determined. So none of this actually matters. All this is sound bites for elections later on. That's all this is.
Yeah.
Sound bites. And you know what? The Republicans get those same sound bites they need to show how good they are at a freaking barbecue. Actually doing something. Actually doing something of substance that matters more.
And I think, like, you know, Ted Cruz could have even written a book about barbecuing. I mean, everybody could have won.
He could have a flowery speech at the barbecue.
Yes, he could have. And I think everybody could have won out of this. So obviously big missed opportunity by the Republicans, but it would have required creativity for them to think about that, and they have none of that. So, you know, not surprising.
You know that story about the splitting of the fish and the bread, right? I feel like
I was obviously referencing that.
I know, no. I'm saying I obviously know you're referencing that. I'm saying I feel like that there was a guy who had a trailer full of fish and bread who read that story later on. And was like, hey, I wasn't included. I wasn't credited in the story, dude. I gave all my bread and fish away, and they said that it was Jesus and that kid.
Yeah, it's actually secretly a parable about capitalism, and then socialists taking credit for capitalists like actually correct. Like, there was a bunch of fish and bread vendors there that were like capitalism working as intended, and then just some socialist Jesus comes by and like takes credit for all the success, and it's like, you didn't do anything.
That's how I like to envision that story. It makes me laugh.
Yes. Alrighty. Well, we will talk more about the impeachment on Saturday, probably. All right. So, AOC lied.
Time check. How much time we got left? 45?
45 minutes.
Okay, last story.
Okay. What does Willow say?
Willow, you got any opinions about this? What's her tail? She has something to say.
Such a good girl. What is she like? Like sometimes she'll like talk to you, but then like when you ask her a question, she just doesn't. She doesn't howl back.
Well, her response to that was to put her head out for me to pet. So you can't see all the nonverbals.
Yeah. Well, you should. Why were you not petting her head?
I am petting her currently. She was laying. Jeez, man.
Why at any point did you stop petting her? It's abuse. All right. So AOC lied. Okay, so it's just a day that ends in Y. On February 2nd, Ocasio-Cortez shared her 1.5 hour Instagram live stream where she discussed what happened to her on the day of the Capitol riot and why she feared for her life. She also revealed that she was a survivor of sexual assault, not once, but twice. And the second time was at the hands of Ted Cruz, possibly. Allegedly.
Who almost murdered her, this close.
Well, I'm not sure if he almost murdered her or almost raped her. I guess it could have been both, but she wasn't clear as to like.
One does not, Never
mind. So Ted Cruz is really busy with doing everything but legislation. He's writing books. He's doing podcasts. He's raping AOC, and like. He's a busy guy, and he's a Zodiac killer. So it's It's a hard. I guess now I'm understanding more about why he doesn't have time to write legislation.
Yeah, as I said earlier on Twitter, everyone should be talking about their stories about the times when Ted Cruz has almost killed them, because I think a lot of people have been affected by him, and we should all call it out.
Yes. All right. So, AOC said that she could hear the rioters breach her building at the Capitol, and that she could hear them banging on the glass of the door. She told a tear jerk. I didn't jerk any tears. It's gross.
This is a separate thing she did.
She told a, quote, tearjerker, not my words, of a story about how she thought the white police officer that came to check on her might have been there to kill her because she's a racist.
Yeah. Those are the two main points. She talked about a lot of things. And she is, by the way, if you don't know, I can send you the link. She's insufferable to listen to. An hour and a half of listening to her talk is literal fucking torture.
Yeah, you gotta send those tapes down to Guantanamo.
Yeah, I mean that's the most effective audio torture I've ever seen. So most of what she said was bullshit, exaggeration to make it sound worse than it was. But the main lie, as you pointed out, was that they breached her building, and that they were banging. She could hear them clearly banging on the glass and yelling things, and that also that she was evacuated for that reason when she was actually evacuated at a different time for a different reason. And then so that's the main lie. And then also, true or not, she chose to use this video to say that she was a victim of sexual assault. So here's the truth. She claimed that the rioters had breached her building. They did not breach her building. If you look on the map, this is where the Capitol building is, where the riots were, and that's her building. And if you don't understand the scale from the Capitol, I'll just take my word for it. That's very far away.
Yes, I've been to the Capitol many times, and that is extremely far away. That is a good 5 to 10 minute walk to get to the back of the Capitol building, where you could actually even walk in at from that building, because maybe point to point, from edge of the building to edge of the building might not be that far, but there's gates and there's walls, especially that day. It is not straightforward to get from AOC's building to the Capitol building. It's a good 10-minute walk if you're being a little bit brisk about it. I feel like I've lost Dyer because it got quiet and he didn't respond to me, and also his audio has flatlined. Gosh darn it, Dyer, what did you do? Well, you can't tell me what he did because he's got no audio. Let's try and call Dyer back.
Dyer? Power's out.
Your power's out?
Yeah.
Why is your power out?
It's storming.
Did you not pay the bill?
Of course I paid the bill.
I don't believe you.
Hey, honey, I know the power's out. It's pitch black in here.
Dyer, did you see that the lights turned off?
I'm aware that the... I know. I gotta go.
What's that?
I gotta go. Right sec. 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
But my phone's going at 11%, so I can't really finish the show.
This is a really great night that we did the show today. So
I'm back.
Okay, Dyer will be back.
1 second.
Okay. So, as I was saying, the Capitol complex is very large. I really hope you guys enjoy the show tonight. Oh man. Okay, so basically, AOC, she's making up the story that she was crying, all this stuff, and that she was trapped in her building. And the way AOC was framing it was that she was in the Capitol building. But she wasn't in the Capitol building. She was in the Capitol complex, which the Capitol complex, for all intents and purposes, is the entire federal triangle, which is this area in D.C., which has all the federal buildings in it, from the Capitol to the White House to the Washington Monument, and then a lot of the office buildings in the area. That's all part of the Capitol complex. And so the Capitol riot happened at the Capitol building. It happened at the Capitol. If you're referring to the Capitol, if you're like somewhere randomly in the United States and you say the Capitol, you could mean the entire city of DC, and that's fine. But if you're in DC and you're living and working in DC and you say the Capitol, contextually, everybody knows that you mean the Capitol building itself, not the Capitol area. You're already there. Like, it contextually wouldn't make sense. If you're already in the capital city, when you say the Capitol, you're obviously referring to the Capitol building. And that's where the Capitol riot happened was at the Capitol building. There was no infiltration of the side buildings, the office buildings at all. And so AOC's in the side buildings, and she's trying to imply that she's in the Capitol building. And I actually thought up until last week when people started tearing this apart, I actually thought that she was in the Capitol building during the riot, which I was like, yeah, okay. I got a feel where she was a little upset about that. But again, AOC is the one who says, well, the point of protest is to make you feel uncomfortable. And she's been encouraging all of the riots and the burning and the looting and the real terrorism that Antifa and BLM have been showing over the summer. So if she's getting a little scared of something, I'm not really, my heart's not really bleeding for her, because she has encouraged the actual terrorism of millions of people over the summer. But either way, so she wasn't actually in the Capitol building, but she was trying to imply that she was in the Capitol building, but she wasn't. So she also, another issue with her story is that she starts citing, in her 90-minute video on Instagram, she talked about what had happened to her, and she actually was so bold as to give out timestamps when things were happening. And so she was talking about, things that she was doing at, 1:22, that the DC or the Cannon building received an evacuation notice for a bomb threat, which that's unfortunately it's a kind of a common thing that happens in DC, is there's bomb threats every now and then, and the buildings get evacuated. Not saying it's not a big deal, but there's video from that particular evacuation of people not being very concerned about it, just kind of milling about, hanging out, not anybody panicking, but the way AOC starts describing these things happening, and she starts saying, she's hiding, she's trying to find bathrooms to hide in. She knocked on her neighbor's door and started trying to find places in her office to hide, and just kind of running around like a crazy person between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. Well, it wasn't until sometime after 2 p.m. when the Capitol was actually breached. And prior to around 2 p.m. when the Capitol was breached, nobody really thought that the Capitol building was going to get breached. Like, they thought, okay, people are going to get up real close to the perimeter, and there's kind of a rowdy mentality going on. But it was actually really surprising when the rioters breached into the actual building. In part because the police appeared to have let them in certain areas. They were able to knock down a door in other areas, and it seemed like the police were just generally understaffed, which is stuff that we went over back at the time. But at 1 p.m. on that day, it was not thought to be a given that it was obvious that the people were going to be breaching the Capitol. So AOC giving out timestamps that she was concerned that there was people already inside her building prior to them having breached the Capitol. And she's also tried to imply that she was in the Capitol building. She's just making stuff up. So now if you look at it in the past from the perspective of the future that we're in now, if you look at it in the past, you could say, okay, well, maybe it's possible that the Capitol rioters might have tried to go into other buildings too, and that maybe they were looking for her. But at 1 p.m. on that day, on the 6th, there was no expectation that people were breaking into buildings and trying to find congressmen. And so AOC saying that an hour before the Capitol building was even breached, she was so terrified that people were going to find her and that maybe Ted Cruz was going to rape her, that she was running around to different locations, crying and trying to find bathrooms to hide in and hiding from white police officers. That's just a crazy person at that point. She's got security there. Obviously, there's police looking for her to try and protect her and make sure that she's part of the evacuation plans and all that stuff. But she, by her own admission, an hour before there was any kind of idea that the Capitol was going to get breached. She was, and remember, when the Capitol got breached, it was almost for a full half hour after the Capitol building was breached. Congress was still in session. They didn't evacuate until well after. It was a good long time after people had illegally entered the Capitol building and Congress had broke session to evacuate the chambers. So you had probably about 90 minutes before Congress breaks and evacuates. 90 minutes before that, AOC is hiding in bathrooms like a crazy person. Which also, I thought that kind of begs the question as to what, the thing Congress was doing that day was counting the Electoral College votes. It was a joint session of Congress. It's a pretty important day in history. And AOC wasn't present that day. That's what I thought was the most shocking, is that AOC was admitting that she just skipped out on oh no. She just skipped out on like an important hearing that day. It was like, AOC, like, you've got a job to do. You're supposed to go to these things. Counting the electoral votes is a pretty big deal. Like regardless of if you did or didn't like what the results were, as a freshman congressman, like, that's a pretty big deal to be a part of the joint session of Congress that's counting the electoral votes. Dyer says the power is back out, but he never told me that the power was up, so I don't know how it went out again, but I believe him. I believe him, Dyer. I believe you, Dyer. But basically, AOC's a crazy person. She lied. She's trying to... She gave this story a good 30 days after the event happened. And so she's trying to use this, you get further and further away from it in time, and the media has created this narrative that it was this, armed insurrection kind of a thing that Trump was leading, and all this craziness. And so AOC's building on that constructed narrative that this was a bigger thing than what it actually was. And she's trying to create this perception that she was one of the primary targets of the insurrection, and they were hunting her down to assassinate her and maybe let Ted Cruz rape her. And she was, running around like a crazy person, hiding in people's offices. So she's trying to get a bunch of, sympathy points or whatever out of this. And the problem is, like, her story just isn't true. If she said after the Capitol was breached and she was actually in the Capitol when it happened and she said that she was scared, totally get that. Totally understandable. But she's talking about being scared before something actually happened, which I think means that she's just making it up. She's trying to make it up with facts that we know after the fact, and trying to confuse what we knew at particular points in time that day. And trying to create this narrative of her, kind of like 24, like a spy, or, somebody who's being hunted, and, she's trying to hide, like in Taken or something like that. And the problem is it's just not true. She wanted it to be more interesting and more harrowing than what it really was. Because I guess she thinks that gives her credibility of some kind, that now she can go ahead and say for the rest of her career, the Republicans tried to, hunt me down and murder me. Ted Cruz tried to rape me, all that stuff. She can say that forever now because she created this narrative. And it was not easy for, the conservatives to fact check this. So, Lotus Eaters, which is Sargon's outlet, they've got a really good timeline matching up with what AOC, the timeline that AOC laid out versus the timeline that we knew about at the time that day. Crowder has a timeline like that. I think the Daily Wire has a timeline as well. I know for sure Crowder and Sargon do. But nobody in the media put together a timeline to see, does AOC's story match up? No, they just took it hook, line, and sinker. They took all the implications for it and they just ran with it. Your mainstream media hard at work doing their job. All right, guys. Well, that is about all we are going to do for tonight. We will see you guys on Saturday. I don't have anything planned on Saturday, so I will actually be here for the show. And Dyer said he scheduled to not be sick, so we will do a show on Saturday. Thank you, those of you who joined us and joined me tonight. And we will see you on Saturday. Have a good rest of the week. Direwolf is out of power, and this is Trevi.